February 23rd, 2025. And Trump wants to go to Fort Knox, and he's kind of hinting that maybe Fort Knox doesn't have the gold in it that we think is in there, or that, you would think is in there, because it's supposed to be full of gold that America owns. But Trump's going to go find out if the gold's still there, and if America still owns it, we'll find out. Egg prices skyrocketing everywhere. I've got news from the UK about their eggs going up, and people are calling this out for what I've been saying for months now, weeks now, that this is a manufactured bird flu is being used to cull chickens, that those deaths of those chickens is impacting the price of eggs because there isn't the volume of eggs anymore. And at what point is there like a complete collapse? Now, it doesn't take long to grow new chickens, right? 6 weeks or something like that before they're laying before they're laying ready or something like that. Like it's not very long. Like it's not like you have to wait 3 or 4 years before this whole thing sorts itself out. But we need to dismantle the ability of bureaucratic health workers to shut down and cull millions of chickens just because a couple of them have runny noses. Like it's very, very concerning. And somebody was sending me there was a doctor or somebody who's involved in the whole bird flu area of things, and he was talking about, like, why do we have to kill these things? Like, wouldn't it be better if we kept the survivors and bred them, and maybe they'll have some kind of immunity against this bird flu next time and they won't die? Like, what's the purpose of killing all them off? And so it's because it's mandated by the state is the conclusion, and that's not really a valid excuse. Anyway, egg prices are going up. Sorry, I went on a tangent. Trump, Lincoln bedroom, he's offering the governors, he was doing a governor's dinner. So he invited all the governors of all the states to come for dinner at the White House, or maybe it was No, it was at the White House. And he invited them up to the Lincoln bedroom. And then he starts talking about Canada, and all the governors start guffawing, and it's very funny. And he likes Canada, and he wants to keep it. So thank you, Mr. Trump. Mr. President. The thought police are out in force in the UK, and they want to revoke Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship. So Charlie Angus, terrorists can keep their citizenship, right? Terrorists are allowed to keep their citizenship. But Elon Musk, no, he's not allowed to keep his citizenship because he's friends with Donald Trump. So how dare he? So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're starting with Charlie Angus. Ryan says the unhinged Charlie Angus wants to go after his political opponents by removing their citizenship status. He's calling for Elon's Canadian citizenship status to be revoked. Unbelievable. Now, I have a theory, and my theory is if Elon Musk wanted to run for prime minister, he could self-fund an ex-political party and walk into Canada and become the prime minister in relatively short order compared to like me, say, because I can't self-fund it, right? Like, and also if I started trying to be prime minister, well, I'm sure that there'd probably be, there'd be issues with that somewhere, I'm sure. I don't have the money for that, and I don't have the reputation for that, unfortunately, right? I'd love to, but I don't think that that's realistic, right? But I think that Elon Musk would be able to put together a team. He's like a billionaire and stuff, right? Like billionaires could do that kind of thing. So, and I mean, I'm not trying to limit myself. I just don't have the resources that Musk has. And the high profile that he's got. He's hanging out with the president of the United States. He's cutting he's running Doge, right? Like the whole thing is apples and potatoes, right? Like it's very, very different. But fundamentally, they're trying to remove a real threat to their hold over Canada. Because what happens if instead of buying Canada, Elon Musk becomes the prime minister of Canada and hangs out with Donald Trump all the time anyway, right? Like, so the whole thing is a move to neuter that potential, right? Not maybe this year, not maybe next year, but maybe next year, right? Like, who knows what could potentially happen? And I mean, if Donald Trump is actually going to economically force the United States or Canada to become part of the United States, it would be in phases. Like we'd be an economic territory of the United States, and then one state one economic region would join as a state, and then another, and so on and so forth. I think that, and there are been a couple of people who've been writing up treatments on how it would go. But this looks to me like people who are trying to cover off a portion of a chessboard that they think is potentially weak. And I just don't think they see reality for what it actually is. But people are saying, oh, there's no way we're going to become the 51st state because we're going to become 10 states? Okay, sure. If that's your argument. Anyway, here's the petition. Whereas Elon Musk is engaged in activities that go against the national interests of Canada, He has used his wealth and power to influence our elections. He has now become a member of a foreign government that is attempting to erase Canadian sovereignty, and the attempts of Elon Musk to attack Canadian sovereignty must be addressed. So we, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the Prime Minister to revoke Elon Musk's dual citizenship status and revoke his Canadian passport effective immediately. And so that's Charlie Angus who's doing that. And City News is pushing this. They say Elon Musk has Canadian citizenship. Thousands of people have electronically signed a parliamentary petition calling for its revocation due to his role in the Trump administration, which is pointedly threatening Canada's sovereignty. So this is a political weapon. How many of those signatures are bots? The whole thing's suspect. And here's Justin Trudeau, who's the leader of Charlie Angus's NDP Liberal Party, talking about how terrorists can keep their Canadian citizenship. But, you know, people like Elon Musk, no way. Here's Justin Trudeau from, I think it's 2014 or something like that.
So you guys can jot it down and put it in a attack ad somewhere that the Liberal Party believes that terrorists should get to keep their Canadian citizenship. Because I do.
That wasn't a laugh line. He was being dead serious. Everybody's kind of uncomfortable murmuring, and then he says, because I do. And everybody laughs out loud because they have no idea what else to do. Terrorists should keep their Canadian citizenship? Terrorists? Right? Like, this bears discussing. But here we are in 2025, and he meant it. He really meant it. But he doesn't want Elon Musk to have that citizenship. Well, Charlie Angus doesn't, right? Justin Trudeau hasn't said anything about that, but we'll see if he comes out on the side of removing Elon Musk's citizenship for daring to oppose, well, the blob, really. Duncan is responding to Stewart. Stewart says NDP MP Charlie Angus has introduced a petition to the Prime Minister calling for him to revoke Elon Musk's dual citizenship status and revoke his Canadian passport effective immediately. And Duncan says, imagine how insane a country would have to be for a sitting politician to circulate a petition to denaturalize someone for purely political reasons. Whether you like him or not, Elon Musk has never been suspected of committing a crime. This is the 2025 equivalent of leading a mob carrying torches and pitchforks. Team Canada, right? Woo! Yay! Get him! Get him! That Elon Musk guy, get him! It's crazy. Here is Donald Trump, and it's so, like, it's funny because he keeps shoehorning it in, and he's like, what? It came up organically. Everybody was there. They were listening. It came up organically. I don't know what you mean. I keep shoehorning this in. He keeps shoehorning it in. It's super funny. Anyway, here he is inviting the governors up to the Lincoln bedroom, and then he lobs a little mini kind of shot across the bow at Canada, but he doesn't say Canada. Here we go. See if you can spot it.
But we have a room called the Lincoln bedroom. I think it's like maybe, to me, the most important room in the whole country, the most important bedroom, definitely, and it's incredible just the way he left it. And he was Abraham Lincoln, after all. And we have it upstairs, and right after we're finished with the meal, I'm going to take whatever group wants to go up. We can handle quite a few. We walk up the stairway, the big, beautiful, grand stairway, and at the top of that stairway is the Lincoln bedroom and the treaty room where we signed virtually every land acquisition. And we are looking at a few of them, by the way, just in case you're not. We're looking at a few. I won't name them tonight, but I think we know what we're talking about, maybe more than we even think. But we'll meet here right after the end of the meal, and we'll walk up together, and you'll see something that actually is really amazing and real history. But we have.
I wonder why he values the Lincoln bedroom so highly. I don't know the history of the Lincoln bedroom, so I'll have to look that up. I'm not sure. Here is President Trump talking about how he likes O Canada, and we'll keep that for the state of Canada. Don't worry, Canada. I love O Canada. Here you go.
They get 95% of their product from the United States. I think they have to become the 51st state. And you heard the people booing the national anthem, but I think ultimately they'll be praising the national anthem. We'll have to work out some deal with it, because I do like the O Canada, right? It's a beautiful thing. I think we're going to have to keep it for the 51st state. I call him Governor Trudeau. I said, Governor Trudeau's doing a wonderful job. I think it's actually cost him his election, if you want to know the truth.
What a troll. Honestly, just trolling up and down all the time. Every time he can bring it up, oh, it just came up organically. Land acquisitions. What are you talking about? I was just talking about things, whatever. Here is Pierre Poilievre, and he's asked, what would you say in a phone call with Mr. Trump? What would you say with the president if you were going to speak to him about this whole 51st state thing? And here's Pierre Poilievre. He's puffing up his chest. He's ready to go.
Let's talk about President Donald Trump. How would you handle him if, hypothetically speaking, you had a phone call with him today? What would that conversation be like? What would you say to him?
Back off. The one will never be the 51st state. We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect our sovereignty. 2, we will respond to terror.
Whoa. Bear any burden and pay any price? Hold on. Is the chocolate cereal on the table here? Like, what price are we talking about? Because we're already pretty heavily taxed, Mr. Poilievre. Pay any burden, any price? Oh, that seems like a lot. We've got to have a discussion about that. I don't know that that's the play that I want, really. Like, what's he offering, really? We've got to know what's really on the table here. Back to this.
First state. We will bear any burden and pay any price to protect our sovereignty. 2, we will respond to tariffs with retaliation, and I will use the dollars raised for those tariffs to save jobs and companies that are directly affected by a trade war, but also cut taxes for workers and businesses so that we can bring home the investment Liberals have driven south of the border. We need to be strong here at home. Under Carney, he supported Trudeau's decision to block pipelines and resource jobs in Canada while he invested in American coal and moved his headquarters from Canada to New York City, just like Trump wanted. We don't need a prime minister who's going to put America's economy first, as Carney did. We need a prime minister who will put Canada first. That means passing a big, bold, patriotic, bring it home tax cut on work, investment, home building, energy, making stuff in Canada, so we can bring back that investment and become a self-reliant country that rewards its companies for paying high wages, that produces its own resources and trades across Canada. That's what we're going to do when I'm prime minister, and that will make us strong to stare down Trump and any of the threats he puts forward.
Right. So which part of that was like close the border and stop the fentanyl? We're going to do that? Like, yeah, okay. Rex Glacier is responding. It seems this is what he says would happen during a phone call. This is what happened during Trudeau's phone call with Donald Trump. Okay, so here's the presidential readout of the call with Prime Minister Trudeau. Today, President Trump held a call with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada. The leaders expressed pride in the excellence of both nations' teams that faced off in a hard-fought hockey championship. The discussion turned to Monday's G7 call that would mark the 3rd anniversary of the invasion and war in Ukraine. Prime Minister Trudeau echoed President Trump's desire to see an end to the war and acknowledged that President Trump is the only world leader who can push through a just and lasting peace. President Trump reminded the Prime Minister that the war should never have started and would not have started had Trump been president at the time. The Prime Minister agreed. Prime Minister Trudeau then informed President Trump that Canada has enforced a 90% reduction in fentanyl crossing the U.S. border and that the Canadian border czar would be in the United States next week for meetings with his American counterpart. The leaders said they both looked forward to Monday's G7 call. So that's how the phone call really goes, right? So despite Pierre Poilievre's pumped up attitude about the whole thing, when he gets on the phone, he's got to report to Trump, what have you done to make sure that no tariffs are going to be levied your way this month? Prime Minister, right? So that's the reality of the situation. It's not what Poilievre is presenting. In my opinion, maybe he would be the strong man and maybe he'd learn diplomacy. Who knows? Defiant L says, who has elections? Oh, Germany. So Trump was asked, there's just a grab bag of Trump stuff because it just kind of didn't really fit anywhere else. And it's kind of fun. So we're going to watch it. We've got to learn about Fort Knox and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're going to do this grab bag of Trump. Here we go. Here's Trump talking about Germany's elections, which I just thought his response was funny.
Germany has elections on Sunday. What are your thoughts? What do you expect to happen in the elections on Sunday?
Who has elections?
Germany.
Oh, Germany. I wish them luck. We got our own problems. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody. That's the end of the set. Okay. Here's Tom Homan, and he's talking about people coming after him, and he says, like, bring it. I think this is the part. I think this is the clip where he says, bring it. Here we go.
Of course, I got numerous death threats. They've doubled the size of my security detail because all the cartels want to take Homa now. Well, I'll tell you what, come get some. You have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. You are now a terrorist organization. So word out to anybody that assists them, anybody that sells their drugs on the street, anybody that assists these cartels in any way, you are helping a terrorist organization, and the weight of the world's coming down on you.
We will crush you, right? It's interesting listening to his cadence of speech and style of speech. It's like rolling down a hill. But it's also not gravelly, but it reminds me of rocks, like rocks rolling down a hill, just because it's not a mumble, but there's not a really clear break between the words. Like his articulation of the words just flow it from one into the other. It's interesting. It's kind of difficult to listen to is not the right word, but it's noticeably different enough that it commands my attention. I'm like trying really hard to listen with understanding. I'm like, what's he saying? What's he saying? What's he saying? Anyway, Nick shares this. Elon Musk announces that all federal employees will receive an email requiring them to outline what they got done last week, per President Trump's instructions. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. The trash will be taking itself out, says Nick. Prepare for another meltdown. And yeah, that seems to be what's going on. Elon Musk says, consistent with President Trump's instructions, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. So it's happening. And here's the email. What did you do last week? Please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. Please do not send any classified information, links, or attachments. Deadline is Monday at 11:59 p.m. So is that reasonable? Could you write down 5 things that you did last week at work? Would my 5 shows be something that I did last week? Not really, because this is a hobby. This is like what I do after work, but it's not after work right now, but you know what I mean. And so like, I would be able to have, I do 5 things that are bullet worthy in a day, probably. So I'm not worried about that. But it's interesting, like how many people do 5 things that are bullet worthy. Like if you're a salesperson, 5 calls a day, that's probably not enough, right? Like 5 sales a day. Maybe that's depending on your vertical, depending on what you're selling, maybe. And again, depending on what you're selling, maybe 5 calls is a lot. Maybe the calls last a long time, but if that's the case, then, those things count and that's work, right? And doing this email, there's a whole bunch of people who are saying this is a bureaucrat's nightmare. All of these little emails add up and blah, 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 blah. It's like, listen, if you can't write down 5 things off the top of your head that you did last week, or like check your email and be like, okay, I did that. Then it should be less than 5 minutes. Like this is not a big ask, really. Like if you work for somebody and they're paying you not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but sometimes hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000, $60,000. And they're like, hey, what'd you do last week? And you're like, whoa, that email is outside of my job purview. Maybe you're not doing enough. I don't know. Yowza, right? Pretty wild stuff. MJ Truth Ultra says, ooh boy, Trump is hinting that there may not be any gold at Fort Knox. Wouldn't it be terrible if we open it up and nothing's there? He says, here's Donald Trump again.
We're also going to Fort Knox. I'm going to go with Elon. And would anybody like to join us? Because we want to see if the gold is still there. We want to see. Wouldn't that be terrible? We open up this Fort Knox. It's just solid granite that's 5 feet thick. The front door, you need 6 musclemen to open it up. I don't even think they have windows. Wouldn't that be terrible if we opened it up and there was no gold there? So we're going to open those doors. We're going to take a look. And if there's 27 tons of gold, we'll be very happy. I don't know how the hell we're going to measure it, but that's okay. We want to see lots of nice, beautiful, shiny gold in Fort Knox. Don't be totally surprised. We open the door. We'll say, there's nothing here. They stole this too. No, we have a very corrupt group of people in this country.
Interesting, right? So he says, don't be surprised if we open the door and there's nothing there. They stole this too. Does Trump already know something? Is this a soft disclosure? Is this preparing the American people for, hey, remember all that wealth that you thought we had? Good thing the dollar is not pegged to this gold in the Fort Knox here because it's gone. And who owns it? Or it's not owned by the American people. Here is a little bit more color. This guy says, this is cat turd. He says President Trump and Elon Musk are going to see if the gold is still in Fort Knox, and it should be live streamed on X. And Elon Musk says this will be fun for everyone. And America AF says, holy cow, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going to live stream it. So that'll be fun. But Brian breaks down kind of what could happen. And he says, hold on, there's a specific point I wanted to make. He's making the case that the gold may be physically there, but Trump and Elon may be refused entry because they don't represent the owners of the gold. The Federal Reserve owns the gold, and the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. It's not American. It's a private bank, right? And so the gold may belong to the Federal Reserve due to the Federal Reserve saying that gold is collateral on the debt that the United States, the Federal Reserve holds of the United States. And how, like, the Federal Reserve would have all that money to lend to the United States. That's weird. But anyway, here's Brian. He says, if what I suspect is true is borne out, that's not the nation's gold anymore, assuming any of it is still there. The people behind the Federal Reserve, the PBH, and the CIA, MIC, ICS have been robbing this country blind for more than 100 years at this point. If you think they'd leave the nation's gold alone, you're being very naive. I'm pretty sure when Trump and Elon try to go into Fort Knox, they're going to be told they can't go in because Fort Knox and its contents are private property, and the real owners have not given them permission to go inside. So as they walk up, they'll be denied. And what does that say? Like, I'm sure Trump has a speech in his pocket ready for, the front of the Fort Knox, and him talking about how gold has been stolen from Americans, and we're going to get to the bottom of this, and so on and so forth. But then, that starts, not a new wizard circle, but a little bit. Or the other thing that could happen is they go in, and there looks to be gold there, but they check it, and it's not actually gold. It's just a facsimile of gold. So tungsten or silver painted as gold. Somebody was saying silver is painted as gold to pass it off because silver is cheaper, and much cheaper, orders of magnitude cheaper, between $25 and $40 an ounce, I think, whereas gold is $2,000 an ounce or something like that. So you could fill up Fort Knox with all sorts of gold-looking silver, right? And somebody said to me, silver doesn't make sense, and you could easily tell what's what with an X-ray for density. And I was like, oh, interesting. So who knows? But this looks fun, and it looks like an interesting wizard circle. And if it's not a wizard circle, then we'll see forward action. If it is a wizard circle, we'll just hear about how it's empty, and then it'll be a talking point forever. So we'll see. We'll see how things play out. There seems to be a lot of forks in the fire, or pokers in the fire, whatever it is. Here is Trump on Joe Biden, and by extension, the same puppet people who have been running things for the last, 20 years. Here we go. 20, 40, 60, 80 years, however long things have been like this. Here we go.
I'm cleaning up the mess, and it is a mess on the border with inflation. To go over every single thing he touched turned to shit, okay? Everything. It's true.
He's not wrong. And it was done on purpose. It was done on purpose at the behest of the puppet masters, and he was a puppet. And here's big mad Trump. He's angry. What's notable about this is Trump takes the audience on a journey, okay? So he starts out angry and says, whoa, back off, Donald Trump. And he goes back to the angry, and then he comes back to a solution and happy Trump again at the end, okay? But it's interesting, 35 seconds. This is a whole story. This is a whole arc. Really, here we go. And this is what a good showman does. This is what somebody who understands how to hold an audience's attention does. He understands that you have to give them something. You have to take them on a journey. He's taking you on a journey. Even micro journeys, 35-second journeys. Here we go. And he's trying to make a point, right? The point of this is to convey, he's intaking people's frustrations, and he's conveying that I'm with you. I feel the same frustrations you're feeling. He's using his platform to demonstrate, I understand what the problem is. And later on in the speech, he's going to say, I know what the solution is. And if he can accurately say what the problem is, then maybe he can accurately solve it, right? Maybe his plan is as good as his interpretation of what's wrong, right? Here's Trump.
I'll tell you, I had 4 years.
Oh, it's too quiet. It's too quiet. Hold on. Jeepers creepers. I have to turn it up. Because it's important. I think it's important. This might be better.
I couldn't stand it. Don't get angry. Donald, don't get angry, please. I couldn't stand it. Watching these people come in from jails and mental institutions and the worst criminals in the street, gang members being dropped off in buses and bussed into our country. I couldn't stand it. So I said, I'm going to run for president again. And now we don't have that problem. I'll tell you.
Okay. So he's a showman and he's good at it. And he's demonstrating that over and over again. Whether he's good at governing, we'll see. I mean, during the first term, he seemed to be good at it. So we'll see how it all plays out. We've got our grab bag of governance after our grab bag of Trump. And a food professor kicks us off. He says, Canada's internal trade fix. Annon's plan leaves major barriers untouched. And I've been talking about this since they started talking about dismantling internal trade. I said they're not talking about supply management at all. And they're not talking about the Energy East pipeline. They're talking about tinkering around with little 5% this and 2% that, and sure, it'll be some money, but it's nothing compared to supply management and getting that fixed and the other real issues. So Energy East, getting our eastern provinces off foreign oil, refining our own product, making a product that we can sell at world market rates and export on both of our, we have access to 2 oceans, right? And we don't use it for LNG, I guess we've got an LNG pipeline, but why not twin it, right? Why not quadruple it? Can you quadruple it? Twin it again, right? There's no reason not to exponentially increase our production and make jobs for everybody. We don't ever need to go through another depression ever again. We can export our energy, build pipelines to Tidewater, and then drill, baby, drill, right? But they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because that would make us energy independent, and they want us to be under the boot heel of climate communism. And we'll get to that when we talk about Carney, because he's got a whole plan. And I think it's plausible what they're talking about he's going to roll out. But first, we've got other stuff to do. Anyway, the food professor says supply management is the linchpin of Canada's internal trade dysfunction, keeping food prices high and stifling competition. While Ottawa celebrates minor progress in removing trade barriers, the real roadblock remains untouched, an outdated system that prioritizes protectionism over affordability and efficiency. Minister Anand, the outgoing Liberal minister, recently announced that over 60% of Canada's internal trade barriers will soon be eliminated. Ottawa claims to have removed 64% of federal exceptions in the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, though it has yet to release a list of the 20 newly removed exceptions expected next week. While this is a commendable step, it falls short, particularly in the food sector, where inefficiencies persist due to long-standing protectionist policies. While much attention has been given to interprovincial restrictions on alcohol products, an issue rooted in Canada's regulatory history, barriers in the broader food sector remain just as problematic. Nova Scotia and British Columbia boast the highest number of vineyards per capita in the country, yet both provinces struggle to sell their world-class products to Canadians in other regions. This inefficiency is emblematic of Canada's broader internal trade dysfunction. And there's more. I'm not going to read the rest of it, but fundamentally, we're in a situation that is legislated, and they're not interested in changing that legislation very much. And they're relying on people listening to sound bites saying, don't worry, 64% of the trade barriers are being removed, when really they're zooming in and saying, if these trade barriers are listed on a piece of paper, we're taking, this many and they're gone. But the number, by volume of money, right? It's minor, right? It may be a lot of line items, but it's not a lot of money and it's not a lot of impact. And they're doing that on purpose. They're making sure that something's being done. But the reality is, not really, right? Not really. It's not going to change much. Here's Rothmus, and he's talking about government jobs being a big driver of job growth. And that puts more control in the government's hand. If they say, listen, here's Karen, your new coworker, and Karen's a bearded they, them, or whatever, then you are now inclined by your employer's actions to play along with this madness. You have to, otherwise you're going to get fired, right? And there isn't any other jobs. All of the jobs being created aren't for innovation or anything like that. Aren't for innovation is like, I made a company and my company is growing and I need more people to help me grow my company. So I need to hire people. And I don't care I don't care necessarily if you believe in the trans agenda or anything like that, so long as you do your job right. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm not pushing my ideals on you, whereas the government seems to be. And that's more power. And when the jobs look like this, it is a balance of they can push things even more, right? Here's Rothmus. He says, big government is an unproductive jobs program for the college-educated middle class. Slash it all at all levels. California's businesses stop hiring. The latest statistics show that nearly all jobs that are being created in California are government jobs. Between January 22 and 24 and June 2024, the total California jobs grew by about 156,000, with government jobs accounting for 96.5% of that growth. Holy smoke, right? Like, that's not very many jobs being created in the state of California. It's a big state, right? Like 156,000 jobs, with most of those jobs going to government. Wow. And that's control, right? And if you slash those jobs, you're going to create, like if a new government comes in and says, we're going to get rid of the waste, and you slash all those jobs, if you don't replace those jobs quickly, you're going to create a depression. And then the other team of, politicians who are puppets will be able to easily counter your, it looks like, austerity agenda, right? But really it's just, we can't just spend all this money. We can't hire people just because we need economic stimulation, which is what they're doing basically, right? These jobs aren't really needed. They're just to get money into the economy to keep it running, which is scary, right? It's scary. And it's happening in Canada too. Here is Pierre Poilievre. He says, erasing our history will never solve our problems. We must celebrate the great Canadian achievements by telling the unvarnished truth. Canada is the greatest country in the world precisely because of those who came and sacrificed before us. The Toronto District School Board is moving ahead to erase Sir John A. Macdonald, Ryerson, and Dundas from Toronto schools. We've had the Sir John A. Macdonald statue in Toronto under a box for years now, since like 2022. And nobody's moved. I mean, Doug Ford has been the premier since, and he hasn't moved to remove the box from that. We're having our history removed in front of us while they're saying, yay, Canada's such a great country. Everybody loves our history. Our history is so amazing. Our history is amazing. Is there a Pierre Poilievre tweet about Sir John A. Macdonald being hidden away in a box and having the statues removed, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know, not recently, but it seems weird to celebrate our whole history when you've been quiet about it, about the wholesale destruction of our history for the last 5 years at least. And further, we're supposed to care about our history at the same time as Donald Trump is offering us statehood. Well, that's convenient, right? Like, oh yeah, Toronto District School Board's helping move people towards statehood because they're removing our history. And like, better to align with, and people on Twitter have been saying this, better to align with the United States than China, right? So it's very interesting. And I don't think we have a choice to keep things as they are. It doesn't seem like Donald Trump's joking. It doesn't seem like he's going to leave it be, right? Came up organically. I don't know what you mean. Mortimer says, wow, so the BC NDP are doing secret land deals with First Nations, which they knew about before the election, all while using your tax dollars as a slush fund to pay for all of this. Sounds like Fast Ferries scandal. So the BC Ministry of Indigenous Relationships and Reconciliation, payments over $25,000, and it's $1.5 billion. Like, it's a lot of money. So others, $402 million. That's a lot of money, right? It's like New Relationship Trust, $400 million. Kuntaksa Nation Council Society, $107 million. Goling WLG LLP, $105 million. That's a lot of money. Is this yearly? Saltee First Nations, Chelsea, and there's $61 million, right? And then less but each line, and then others, $400 million. Just $400 million. You don't need to know what the others are. It's just, it's a big category. Okay, that's all. It's a big category. So, no, we don't have a line-by-line audit. Next question. Why not, right? Like, why wouldn't you be able to break that down? I wonder where you could break that down, right? So, secrecy over BC land management deals destroys NDP's credibility. Well, the NDP didn't actually have any credibility, so nothing there to destroy. Ryan is talking about Charlie Angus again. He says Charlie Angus wants to now ban X from all government agency communication channels, ban all political candidates at all levels of government to campaign or share messages under both public and official capacity, and he wants to tell all of us to use alternative sites to communicate. Charlie has lost it. He's an authoritarian. So that's pretty crazy. He says, we, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the government of Canada to ban the social media platform X on all government agency communication channels, ban political candidates at all levels of government to campaign, promote, disseminate, and share contents or messaging under public or official capacity. And 3, publicly encourage private Canadian entities and users to use alternatives to communicate and interact with their audiences. So wild and crazy times. It's very, very interesting that they want to shut down, the X platform. It's fine. We want to remove Elon Musk's Canadian citizenship and remove Canadians' ability to use the platform owned by Elon Musk. Interesting. And I mean, again, I have questions about the guy who wants to put a brain chip in our head, right? Like I have questions about these things. Guy who's going to Mars, et cetera, et cetera. I have questions, and I don't trust him blindly or anything like that. But this seems like a pretty wild and crazy attack on a person who's not even really focused on Canada at this point in time, right? Just wait until he becomes focused on Canada. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful